Planning Commission meeting. And as a public service announcement, any members of the public who wishes to address the Planning Commission under a public forum, as well as tonight's public hearing item, you may do so by following the instructions on this evening's agenda to sign in via the Milpitas IT so you can be queued in for your opportunity to speak. And so with that said, calling the meeting to order. And the next agenda item here is Pledge of Allegiance, and Chair will lead the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate it. And next agenda item here is roll call with the Commission Secretary, Ms. Medina. Conduct the roll call, please.
Hi, Chair. Hi, everyone. I'll now take attendance. Commissioner Albana.
Present.
Commissioner Alcorn.
Here.
Commissioner Belong.
Present.
Vice Chair Chuan.
Here.
Commissioner Ciardella.
Present.
Commissioner Galong.
Present.
And Chair Tao.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And the next agenda item here is the conflict of interest declaration. Mr. City Attorney, if you will poll the commissioners, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Ask whether any of the commissioners have a financial or personal conflict of interest on any of the items before you tonight. I'll go down the line. Commissioner Galam.
No, sir.
Commissioner Ciardella.
None.
Commissioner Albano.
None.
Commissioner Belong.
None.
Commissioner Alcorn.
None.
Vice Chair Chuan.
None.
And Chair Tao.
None.
Okay, let the record reflect none to that question.
Thank you, Mr. De Los Angeles. Appreciate it. And the next agenda item here is the approval of the agenda. Commissioners, any changes? Planning Director, any changes to tonight's agenda?
We have no changes to the agenda tonight, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for outdressing the rest of us with a tie and a jacket on. We appreciate it. And so may I have a motion? Mr. Chong, please, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Please, and can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Chuan and a second by Commissioner Ciardella. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Commissioner Albana.
Aye.
Commissioner Galon.
Aye.
Commissioner Ciardella.
Aye.
Commissioner Belong.
Aye.
Commissioner Alcorn.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Chuan.
Aye.
Chair's aye as well. Seven ayes. Motion carries. And the next agenda item here is the approval of minutes. And this is for the April 14th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting minutes. And commissioners, any changes to the minutes? Seeing none. Staff, any changes to the April 14th, 2021 minutes?
No changes to the minutes.
Thank you, Director. And so may I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Belong. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, I think I heard Commissioner Gallant first. So we have a motion by Commissioner Belong and a second by Commissioner Gallant. And so I'll go down the line and for the votes. Commissioner Albana.
Aye.
Commissioner Gallant.
Aye.
Commissioner Ciardella.
Aye.
Commissioner Belong.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Alcorn.
Aye.
Vice Chair.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair, aye as well. Motion carries 7 ayes. Thank you very much. And the next agenda item here is announcements. Commissioners, any announcements this evening? Seeing none. Vice Chair, I assume that was just a scratch, right?
That was a scratch.
Thank you. No problem. And thank you very much. And Director, any announcements?
No announcements tonight, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the chair just wanted to do a quick follow-up with respect to the training that which was mandated by the city on the sexual harassment trainings. I assume that all the commissioners have the opportunities to complete their trainings and get a certificate over to Human Resources for that purpose. Thank you. And the next item here is the next agenda item here this evening is the public forum. Those interested are invited to address Planning Commission on any subject not on tonight's agenda, orally via Zoom webinar, instructions above. Speakers may provide their name and city of residence for the recording secretary's record, and comments may be limited to 3 minutes or less. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the Planning Commission, and no action can be taken. Planning Commission may instruct the staff to place the item on the future meeting agenda. So, Ms. Medina, do we have any public comments in the queue?
Hi, Chair. There are no public comments in the queue right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And moving on to the next agenda item, here is the public hearing. And this is for the grocery store at 1261 East Calaveras Boulevard. And with Planning Manager Gardner, please introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners, Vice Chair. The item before you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit to allow a 3,650 square foot grocery store in an existing building within a commercial inline center that's located just north of Calaveras Boulevard and west of North Park, Victoria. Adrian Smith is our associate planner, and she will be presenting on the item tonight. And just to note that the applicants are also going to be available, and looks like they'll be ready and willing to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. And Chair will turn the floor over to Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Planning Manager Garner, and thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and good evening to all. As mentioned, the item before you is a conditional use permit for a grocery store at 1261 East Calaveras Boulevard. Next slide, please. So the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a 3,650 square foot grocery store in an existing building on a 4.3 acre site. In the grocery store use is conditionally permitted in commercial zoning districts. Next slide, please. So here we see the aerial view of 1261 East Calaveras Boulevard outlined in blue. The subject site is an existing 47,484 square foot multi-tenant commercial shopping center. It's known as Victorian Square. And this site is spread across 4 buildings. The proposed grocery store, as mentioned, will be located in a 3,650 square foot existing tenant space. Next slide, please. So the zoning ordinance designates this parcel as general commercial C2, which allows for grocery stores with the approval of a CUP by the Planning Commission. The site, you can see, is surrounded by single family homes to the north, East Calaveras Boulevard, and a hotel and various restaurants and commercial services to the south. North Park Victoria Drive, medical and dental uses, and a gas station to the east. And then we have some single family homes to the west as well. Next slide. So here we see the view of the proposed grocery store location. The suite was previously occupied by Leslie Pool Supplies Service and Repair, and it is currently vacant. The applicant doesn't propose to alter the exterior of the suite other than installing a shopping cart corral out front, and they will be applying for exterior signage under a separate permit at a later date. Next slide. So the applicant will generally maintain the existing floor plan, but does propose to make a few interior improvements, and that includes a new back office, a built-in storage cooler, and freezer areas. The sales floor will contain 5 long shelving units for dry goods, as well as a chiller and multiple freezers and 4 checkout stations that'll be located near the front of the store. Next slide, please. So the applicant proposes to sell a variety of general Indian food products, including fresh and frozen vegetables, meats, dairy, and bakery products, frozen prepared foods, and a selection of cooking tools. The proposed hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. The grocery store will not sell alcohol. And to ensure orderly site operations, the applicant will install that cart corral out front to keep the carts in a designated area, and they will be receiving all grocery deliveries via their rear service entrance only. Next slide, please. So when we look at parking, there are 308 parking spaces spread across the project site, and it's shared amongst all 4 buildings and 19 tenants in total. And based on the analysis of the site parking, the project complies with the Milpitas zoning ordinance parking requirements, and in fact has a surplus of 77 parking spaces. Next slide, please. So the project is conditioned to ensure tidy, safe, and secure site operations. The applicant will implement a comprehensive waste recycling and management plan, and they will install a high-definition security system, as well as some exterior signage to prevent trespassing and loitering. Next slide. This project is exempt from further environmental review under CEQA Section 15301, existing facilities, and Section 15183, projects consistent with a community plan, general plan, or zoning. As proposed, the project will conditionally permit a grocery store, and aside from minor interior improvements and the addition of that exterior cart corral and later new signage under a separate permit, this project will not alter the existing facility. The project is also consistent with the Milpitas general plan and zoning ordinance. Next slide, please. So for public comment, a notice was published in the Post, and postcards were sent to 443 residents and owners located within 1,000 feet of the project site. A sign was also placed at the property. Notices were posted at City Hall and the city's website. And as of this evening, staff have received only 2 comments, and they were both in support of this project. And those comments are included in your packets. Next, please. Staff has confirmed that this project meets the findings associated with a conditional use permit as set forth in the Milpitas Municipal Code. Those findings have been discussed in the staff report and are also addressed in the resolution. Next slide, please. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission open and close the public hearing, consider exemptions in accordance with CEQA, and adopt resolution number 21-013, approving conditional use permit number UP 21-001, subject to the findings and conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation, and I welcome all questions from the Planning Commission. As Planning Manager Garner mentioned, the applicant is here, and they would like to give a very brief presentation and introduce this project to you at their allotted time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate your presentation this evening. And at this time, Chair would like to welcome the applicant. Which gentleman will be making the presentation on behalf of this application? Well, Mr. Matthew, you're still on mute.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Tao, for the opportunity to introduce our business. My name is James Matthew, and I have more than 20 years of experience in the food service industry.
Mr. Matthew, if I may interrupt for 1 second, if you can speak up a little bit or have your volume go up a little bit so we can get better audio.
Yeah, my name is James Matthew, and I have more than 20 years of experience in food service industry. Janata LLC is our company, formed in 2019 with the 9 members who live in Bay Area. Considering the growing demand for Indian spices and fresh vegetables in the Bay Area, we plan to open a grocery store in Milpitas. We will keep our shelves filled with goods from all parts of India and locally grown vegetables. We will ensure the freshness of vegetables through frequent local purchases. We offer the cleanest store of this kind in the Bay Area, with ample space between aisles to make shopping more easy and healthy. Our store hours will be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We will be able to generate 8 to 10 regular employment opportunities in a short period of time. I think our store will bring more customers to the area, and that will make a positive impact for the business in the neighborhood. Kindly let us serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. We appreciate your comments. At this time, commissioners, any questions for the staff as well as for the applicant? I don't see any raised hands here. I'll go ahead, just check off on each of the commissioners. Commissioner Albana, do you have any questions for staff and the applicant?
All right, thank you, Chair. For Mr. Matthew, would you have other outlets already existing?
No, this is the first outlet
I
from Canada.
I see. What is the difference between a grocery store and a market? Is there any difference, or that's the same? Like I guess it's a grocery store outlet, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you, Commissioner Albana. And Commissioner Galan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Chair, I have a question from Mr. Matthew. Matthew, what type of grocery are you going to sell? Can you tell me?
Yeah, mainly we will be keeping Indian spices and vegetables from the local market, frozen vegetables and snacks, frozen Indian food items, then frozen fish, milk, bread, cheese.
Where do you get those products? Do you buy from outside or?
Actually, we have like more than 5 warehouses in Bay Area. I was manager of one of the warehouses previously, and we get all the frozen items and the Indian spices from those suppliers. They will deliver at our shop, and we can get the vegetable from the local market, and sometimes you will get it from Los Angeles.
Canned goods, do you sell canned goods also?
Sorry?
Do you sell canned goods? Like corned beef cans in can?
We will be selling only the frozen fish and refrigerated meat, like chicken and goat. That is from, we are trying to get it from Green Meadows. That is a farm in this area, California.
Okay.
No canned meat.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Galan. And Commissioner Cerdello.
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Belong.
Thank you, Chair. Will you be serving or cooking any types of prepared foods?
Only the frozen. We are
Only?
not, right now we are not planning other than a few snacks like vadas or only samosa and vada.
Okay, so no cooking or
No cooking.
any. Okay, and then is this time for questions for staff as well, Chair?
So Commissioner Belong, if you will, for planning staff, yes. And the others, I think I've got a fire marshal on, and we'll go ahead and do that separate.
I think this is more geared towards planning.
Please.
As far as parking goes, I know that they're sharing the parking lot with several other companies. Is there some type of parking regulations of how many spots pertain to this grocery store, or is there any regulations on that?
Yeah, so how the zoning code sort of speaks to this matter is that we take a look at every existing use on the site as well as any vacant spaces, and we use a parking ratio to calculate a minimum number of spaces that would be required for that use. So that's what we've done here is we've broken out every single user on site, figured out their minimum number of spaces based on their square footage, and we've determined that that parking demand is less than what's available on site. So there's 231 spaces required based on the use types across the site and 308 spaces available. So we don't actually mark out spaces for a given user because it's a shared lot. So it's more of a total. We look at it holistically.
And it meets the requirements. It's actually under the threshold.
Right. Yeah. So so the site is the site has 77 surplus spaces. So we're in good shape.
Perfect. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Belong, and Commissioner Elkhorn.
No questions.
Thank you, and Vice Chair Chuan.
No questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for the applicant. In the staff report, as outlined out in the page 5 of 10 of staff report, in regards to sort of handling the refuse and also recycles. So, questions for the applicant as well as for staff, I should say. So, is there a separate and dedicated collection area that which is intended for this particular use, or are we just using the existing on-site facilities?
So the trash, so at the rear of the building is actually a service lane. So there's no actual parking back there, and there's no storefronts back there. So that's where their bin is going to be stored. Okay,
and the waste management is able to get their equipment through there. I would assume.
Yes, that's my understanding. That I actually drove back there to take a look, and it's sufficient to fit waste haulers. Yeah. So
if I can just ask that, take the question one step further. So it will not be in an enclosed area, but it will just be freestanding in the back driveway area. Is that correct?
I believe that's the case. You know what? I'd have to take a close look at the aerial view of the site. Mr. Matthew, is an enclosure back there, or is it simply an open bin that's at the rear?
It is in the open space.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
Okay. The staff did not see any conditions that's associated with it. So if I may just request both the applicant and also staff sort of crafting something that which will allow for the usage to be non-blocking, to traffic, and also to creating traffic issues back there, because it is not in a contained environment.
Chair, can I ask one really quick clarification question that piggybacks on your question? Are they getting their own separate waste management system, or is it the same one that the whole building has been using this whole time?
The system which is used by the building.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
The building is taking care of the trash management there.
Okay. So you're not getting your own. It's just the one that the building's been using.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the interruption.
And not a problem. And just on that note,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Director Thomas. Director Thomas, I think you're having a little video problem on your end.
Yeah,
Okay,
I still am having trouble.
We can
Can
hear
you hear
now.
me okay?
Correct.
Okay, mine is coming in and out. So I'm looking at the back of the building, and there is a trash enclosure there that's used. It appears that it's used for the entire building. We can add a condition of approval here that the trash must be there. It looks like it's something that the city should look into, particularly if we're having grocery stores produce quite a bit of recycled materials from boxes and some waste materials. So we can look into that, but Adrian, I might have you add a condition of approval to address trash removal from the site. And we've had similar questions come up in the past for other grocery stores that the commission has reviewed, and we addressed it in a similar way. So we can take a look at how we wrote that condition and add it here.
And then through the chair as well, just to clarify, in the staff report, Adrian also outlines there will be numerous times throughout the week when trash and recycling is going to be collected. So there's not going to be much of an opportunity for trash to just be sitting on the site. It's going to be picked up multiple times throughout the week. So I just want to note that hopefully it won't become a noxious situation back there.
We absolutely agree. You know, it's a pretty frequent pickup and schedule, as well as looks like the bins are large enough to handle. We just want to make sure that they're properly situated, along with being sanitary, so that so the proper traffic can properly get through it without hindrance.
Sure.
Appreciate it. And on a similar note, so for Mr. Matthew, you know, in terms of the grocery carts, do you have a dedicated employee that will go around and collect them on a regular scheduled hours, so that they're not, you know, on the site here and there?
Definitely. We are keeping only limited number of carts, and we will be collecting from the parking area frequently.
Okay. And are these carts sort of outer area limited by the parking lot, or
not really?
Okay. All right. On that note, there, you know, we're certainly seeing a lot of grocery carts these days, everywhere, you know, along freeways, on the side, as well as on the streets, from folks who are moving them. So we just want to, you know, be able to minimize, if we can, within the operator's ability to control the cars, you know, more cars arriving on our streets.
Yeah, we will try to do that if it is
Through the chair.
Commissioner Balong?
Yeah, is it in our privy to add, I know some grocery stores, they have a locking mechanism so that the carts can't leave the parking lot. Is that within our privy to suggest something like that?
That'll be up to the commission's pleasure, and also the, I think, the applicants, whether the applicants would like to add that as well.
And through the chair, if I may, I just would like to note that we've had a number of different very small format grocery stores before the Planning Commission in the past couple of years. That has never been a condition that's been imposed on any other of our grocery stores that are small businesses. And I think that could present an undue burden. Those are pretty expensive, and this is a very small business. So I would just like to note that we've never made that kind of condition, for any of our other grocery stores, including our large format grocery stores.
I agree. I'm not in favor of that. Also, it would be a hassle dealing with the property owner on that, because the property owner is the one who owns the parking lot, and they're leasing a spot out of that area. And so I would not be in favor of that technology for locking the carts around the parking lot.
Well, certainly understand the commissioner's sentiment on both sides of the issue, and I think given the staff recommendations, I would encourage the applicant, if this application is approved, that you do a fairly regular pickup of carts, so that we're able to maintain them on site in an orderly fashion. Okay. In terms of no alcohol sales, that is no alcohol sales for all types of wine and spirits, and is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And is there are you going to be implementing a pest control program for the operation? Mr. Matthew?
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Chair has no further questions. Circling back to the commission, any other questions for the applicant and the planning staff? Okay.
I just had one more. As far as deliveries go, is there going to be a set time frame of when they can be delivered? Just since the backside of the property there is bordered to residential, is that going to?
Actually, we are planning to start the delivery from 2 o'clock, and the delivery will go from 2 to 2:30 in the afternoon.
That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Okay. I did see on the participant roll this evening that we also have our our Chief Fire Marshal Albert Zamora and Mr. Jaime Garcia here as well. Good evening, Mr. Zamora. How are you?
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, honorable members of the Planning Commission. How are you all?
Good. Thank you very much for being here this evening. And commissioners, we'll probably direct any questions we may have for Chief Fire Marshal Zamora. And so I'll go the reverse order this time. Vice Chair Tron, do you have any questions for Mr. Zamora?
Maybe just one, maybe just get your view on the overall fire safety around, this particular project. Any
Sure.
Comments?
Yeah, this building is obviously a retail use, so it's one of the lower level hazards in terms of its occupancy. It is fully sprinkled. Based on the retail use and the square footage of 3725 square feet, it is approximately 37 persons that could occupy, which is less than 49, and one exit is required, which will be the main entry and main exit. That being said, we feel very confident with this building in terms of its use. It will be easily compliant with the California Fire Code, so there should be no issues.
Thank you, Chair. That's all the question I had.
Thank you. And Commissioner Alcorn, any questions for Mr. Zamora?
No questions, just Mr. Zamora, keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And Commissioner Belong?
None. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ciradella?
Yeah, it sounds like Chief Zamora has given his blessing on this.
Yes, sir. We have blessed it.
So blessed. Thank you. And any other comments, Commissioner Ciradella?
None other.
Thank you. Commissioner Galan, any questions?
Yes, Chair. Sir Zamora,
Yes,
good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Do you think you have enough space for your truck at the back of that building in case there's fire?
Oh, yes, we do. Actually, I viewed the aerial earlier this afternoon, and because Leslie Pools was commissioned sometime in 1996, with all the other buildings and occupancies that have been there, we have adequate fire access, so we're good to go.
How about fire hydrant? Is there anyone around the area?
Yeah, there are. There are going to be public hydrants as well as some miscellaneous on-site hydrants. The fire code requires us to be within 150 feet as long as there's adequate fire department access. So we are good to go with that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief Zamora.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Galan. And Commissioner Albana?
None at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Zamora, looking at the floor plan right now, and on the back side, we have one grade level door in the back. We understand one exit is only is required. So does just one roll-up door present any problems in terms of if there's in case of fire emergency? Do we have the ability to vacate out occupants?
Well, technically under the fire code, unless it's a required exit with an approved illuminated exit signs, then that would be a required means of egress. Roll-up doors are not considered means of egress or required exit. So I guess in the case where there is an emergency and the roll-up door happens to be open, there's an emergency, anyone can actually peel out of there if they need to get out to the public way. However, that is not deemed as a required exit. And because your occupant load is less than 49, all you required by code is just a single exit at the front.
Sure. And does it require on the backside any kind of sort of dashed out way areas?
No, it doesn't, because by the time you open up that door, you're not running into any kind of impediments or obstructions. So when you go out, you see daylight during the day, but at night, hopefully with adequate lighting, you'll be able to find your way out to the public way.
Thank you, Chief Zamora. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Zamora? Okay, seeing none. And Chief Zamora, thank you very much for you being with us this evening. We really appreciate your time.
Very welcome.
Thank you. And do we have any other staff members from other departments here this evening? I'm not seeing it on the participant roll here. So, so this has been a public hearing. At this point, time chair would like to go ahead and open up to the public comments. And Ms. Medina, do we have any public comments in the queue? You're muted.
Muted. Sorry about that. Chair, we do not have any community members in the queue for public comment.
Thank you very much. And so can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Alcorn and a second by Commissioner Belong. And I'll go down and do a call on the vote. Commissioner Albano.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Galan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ciradella.
Aye.
Commissioner Belong.
Aye.
Commissioner Alcorn.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chuan.
Aye.
Chair, I as well. Public hearing portion is closed. 7 ayes. And commissioners, before any motions, can I just request that any discussions, comments for this particular project? And Commissioner, if you'd like to raise your hand or speak up on any comments or conditions or discussions. I'd like to have your input. Okay, seeing none. Vice Chair, please.
I was gonna see if there was none, and I was gonna make a motion.
Looks like we have no comments, so floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 21-013, approving conditional use permit number UP 21-0001 to allow the operation of a 3,650 square foot grocery store within a tenant space in an existing commercial shopping center located at 1261 East Calaveras Boulevard, subject to the findings and the conditions of approval.
Second.
Thank you. Vice Chair, if I recall during our discussion, we had one condition that was to be added.
Right. I was gonna state that as well. In addition, to also add the conditional of approval for the waste disposal in the rear. Is that I guess question for planning director? Is that the correct language there?
Talking about the enclosure.
We can, through the chair, we can just or we will word it accordingly. It's kind of in a general way that there'll be a condition to address trash, the trash enclosure and trash removal at the rear of the building.
Thank you.
We'll add a few details in there about follow-up on that too, just to make sure that they're doing it properly.
Well, thank you, Director, for the clarifications, and we'll rely upon the staff and the city attorney to find out a language for that particular conditional add. So I have a motion from Commissioner Chuan with the added condition, and I heard from Commissioner Ciradella a second. Is that a friendly second to the added condition?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Chuan and a second by Commissioner Ciradella, and I'll go down the line for the vote calls. And Commissioner Albana.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Galan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ciradella.
Aye.
Commissioner Belong.
Aye.
Commissioner Alcorn.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner, Vice Chair Chuan.
Aye.
Chair, I as well. So motion carries 7 ayes. And I would like to, on behalf of the City and Planning Commission and staff here, would like to welcome this new operations into the city, and we wish you all the best in going forward. And we wish you to be a great member of our community here, and meeting many needs of our community members. Thank you. Okay, moving on and on to the next next agenda item here. And so this is under new business. Planning Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month or so ago, the Economic Development Director, Mr. Andrade, who's here with us tonight, brought to my attention that they had recently completed a study looking at the impacts of the COVID pandemic over the past year on the hotel and the travel industry. It's a very interesting report, and I thought that it would be of interest to the members of the Planning Commission as well. So he is here tonight along with some members of his staff to present the report and then entertain any questions that you might have. So maybe turn it over to Economic Development Director Alex Andrade.
Thank you,
Director
Ned.
Andrade, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tal. Good evening, Vice Chair Chuan, commissioners, staff, and community. My name is Alex Andrade. I am the Director of Economic Development. I'm pleased to say that I'm being joined by Nicole Inamine. She may be new to you. She has been with the Office of Economic Development since September of 2020. So we're going to tag team on this presentation. If the presentation can be, there it is, brought up. So once again, thank you for allowing the Office of Economic Development to come and present what we believe to be a very important study that we called Surviving the Pandemic and Building Resilient Hotel and Travel Industries. This is a look at not just our local hotel environment, but a regional one. And so we're doing something that's relatively unique, where a lot of Office of Economic Development staff tend to look within their own jurisdiction. We obviously do that, but we understand that there's a regional component to hotel and travel industries and its ecosystem. So with that, we're going to kick off this report. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about why we're here. Clearly, there has been a pandemic. We're very much in it. The chart before you looks at coronavirus cases from January of 2020 through May 11th, just yesterday. And you can see the various peaks there. That's really, really important because when we issued this report, which was just about mid-January, the information that we had back then in terms of statistics and positive coronavirus cases, December 31st of 2020, the CDC reported just over 19 million Americans who had tested positive for the coronavirus, and over 337,000 Americans have passed away. But consider this, in the last 4 months, 13.2 million more Americans have tested positive, and just about 280,000 Americans have passed away due to the coronavirus. The message here is that we're still very much in this fight. Certainly, coronavirus case numbers are dropping. There are fewer people passing away, and of course, we have the various vaccines that people can be taken advantage of and taking to help. But when it comes to not only people losing their lives, there's also business owners that have been losing their livelihoods, and people have been losing their jobs. And the hotel and travel industry just plays an amazing, important, positive externality for all of the Silicon Valley communities. So next slide, please. So the chart before you is a C.B. Richard Ellis Q3 2020 historical and forecast from the year 2015, looking forward to 2020. And you'll notice that on the chart itself, I have added red markings under 3 columns. OCC stands for occupancy rate, which is important because that's a metric that hoteliers use to figure out how many rooms are actually occupied. And ADR stands for average daily rate, which again is another important metric. But I really want to turn your attention to RevPAR, which is on the right-hand side. Specifically, that negative 64% specifically talks to the reduction in TOT, transit occupancy tax or hotel tax, that the city has lost. And you'll see on the next slide how detrimental that loss is. So next slide, please. We're going to hone in directly into the Milpitas hotel tax revenues. What you see before you is a historical look from fiscal year 2015 2012, 2013, all the way to 2021, 2022. The numbers on the top of those bars represent dollars in millions. And so you can see that starting, at least here on this bar graph in 2013, that we were steadily increasing and improving our hotel tax. And in 2019, there was a hotel tax increase from 10% to 14%. And city staff believed that that was certainly going to help with increasing revenues. And it started to do that. But we did notice that in 2019, the economy was already starting to kind of take a little bit of a pause. That happened even before the pandemic. But what you see between 20 and 21 there is we've gone from $11.4 million to the current year of $4.1 million. And that's incredibly detrimental because revenue is down. And when you look at revenue sources, the city doesn't have many, but the city has three major revenue sources that include property taxes. Property taxes are generally pretty steady. And then you have hotel tax and sales tax. And while they certainly generate quite a bit of funding, they're also incredibly volatile. And you see that in a pandemic, you see that we lost over $7 million of TOT from one year to the next. That 11.4 minus 4.1 equals 64% of that RevPAR that I showed you at this previous slide. So it's incredibly important for us to basically help the hotel, lodging, travel, hospitality industry, because in many ways, when we help them, they help us. Now, our finance team is looking at an outlook where they have indicated that they don't believe that the hotel industry is going to come back to pre-pandemic levels. I am hopeful and optimistic that perhaps by 2024, we will see more of, the $11.4 million TOT revenues per year, perhaps 14.5 million. I'm optimistic that the industry is going to bounce back. Next slide, please.
Mr. Andrade,
yes,
quick. Sir. I don't recall Milpitas having too much of a recession in 2019. By any chance, was the reduce in income from the TOT, do you think it had anything to do with increasing the tax? So it possibly maybe turned some people away from traveling and using hotels?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Alcorn. There was a study done by HVS, which is a hotel consultant. And the information we received was that it would not negatively affect the hotel market. I met with 4 general managers of 4 different hotels in quarter 3 or 4 of 2019, and they were all indicating that quarter 2 of 2019 was a down quarter. So for them, they were already starting to see that trend happen. They were not calling it a recession. But we also saw that our sales tax was starting to take a dip ever so slightly. So we would not refer to that as a recession.
Just kind of a slight downslope.
A blip.
Yeah,
yes, sir. Exactly.
Because I remember when it was passed and when it went into effect, there was some people who were upset, but I believed it was a very loud minority. And so, okay, I wanted to get some clarification after seeing the numbers here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, of course. Can we move to the next slide, please?
Director Andrade, if I can just interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, of course.
Vice Chair has a question.
Sure.
I just wondering if the previous slide again, can you go back to that one there?
Of course.
Yes, so that one there, so 2021. So right now we're in May. So is that projection just for up to this point right now, the 4.1 million? I mean, based on the amended budget?
Yeah, so our fiscal year will end in June, so next month. So that is,
all right,
that is what it looks will be that real number that we end up getting. A couple of months later, we'll have the actuals, quote unquote actuals. And then you see 22, fiscal year 21-22, we are projecting or forecasting $7.7 million of TOT, which of course is a strong jump from the current year. However, it doesn't get us to that 14.5 like we did, 14.5 million like we saw in 2019.
Does it also take into account, like, so, you hear, on the news, like certain companies are opening back up, you hear like some are opening in May, and then there's gonna be like a large, majority of companies opening up back in July. Does that also take that into account?
Yeah, Vice Chair Chuan, given that you work in the tech sector, that's exactly right. We are a business destination, and there's a chart here. We're actually going to talk about that. But as the tech sector goes, so does the hospitality sector. So if tech, being our main driver, is doing well, then there's business travel, and then there's a multiplier effect that you'll see on that next slide. So yes, there is a strong correlation between those two.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Director Andrade, if I can just be the last question
Sure.
here.
Of course.
I apologize for the interruption.
No worries.
Between the say, if is it the taxes collect on a quarterly basis, or is it sort of monthly rolling along? And how much of a delay from the time when a month ends to when the tax revenue does show up in the city's coffer?
Yeah, Chair Tao, you'll have to excuse me. I believe if the TOT is collected on a quarterly basis, we will confirm that. It does take us a quarter or so to look back at our actuals to confirm the dollars that have come in.
And it's via the state or county on that process.
Yes, certainly our local hotels are being charged that. I don't know the process, to be perfectly frank, of whether certainly some dollars go from here to the state, but I don't know whether they go to the state and then they come back to the city, or whether they go directly from the lodging industry to the city's finance department. But we can certainly find that out and provide you that information.
Curiosity questions. Thank you very much for the response.
Of course. It looks like Commissioner Sardella may have a question.
Commissioner Sardella?
Yes, my question is, if we go back to the previous slide with the percentages there, the 14.5%, the high in 2019, did that include, and the prior ones too, did that include any new hotels? Because I believe it was one of the hotels we had approved in 2019 on the other side of 880. Next to the oh God, what's it called? The where the buses park?
Yes, the Element, which is under construction now and is scheduled to open before the end of the year. So, Commissioner Sardella, the answer to that is yes. That type of development not only increases the property taxes that are coming into the city's coffers, but yes, it increases the TOT. And so at the moment, we have roughly 20 hotels, including somewhere around 3,000 keys, meaning 3,000 rooms. And there are a couple of other hotels in the pipeline. So yes, it does include that. However, in our research, we did recognize and learn that 2018, 2019 year, that was kind of a banner year in terms of occupancy rates were at their height in terms of percentage. So more people traveling, more people staying in rooms, more people spending money.
And I'll tell you a little story here. It kind of made me chuckle there that developer that came into town, he couldn't find a room in Milpitas, so he had to get a room in Fremont. So I thought that was kind of hilarious, so.
That was very much the case pre-pandemic, and it's true. We, the tech sector doing so well. The Monday through Thursday timeframe is really the sweet spot for the hotels, because we're a business destination, not a travel destination. If we were, or rather a leisure destination, we would be more a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night type of destination. But yeah, we've noticed that there are people that have to travel to other nearby locations to get a room that's fairly economical.
And hopefully, Legoland opening up here, next week, I guess it is, will help, our hotels also.
Yes, sir. Legoland Discovery Center is scheduled to open on May 25th. And before the pandemic, we heard from Legoland representatives that they anticipate that roughly 300,000 people from around the region will come and visit Legoland. So that has a multiplier effect as well, because people will likely eat and shop at Great Mall, perhaps stay at our hotels. And so it's kind of a win-win in that regard, rather.
Thank you, Director Andrade. If you will continue with your presentation. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. So speaking of multiplier effect, the hotel and the hospitality industry is it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving, is the way I look at it. You see the hospitality ecosystem there, starting with hotels, transportation, food and beverage, sport and entertainment, meetings, convention centers. We learned that for every $100 spent on lodging from one person, they then turn around and spend about $222 on their stay on various activities that include transportation, food and beverage, entertainment, goods and services. So it has a real strong positive externality and multiplier effect. Next slide, please. So in order to learn more about what was happening both locally and regionally from a hotel and travel perspective, we needed to learn more, and we decided, why don't we issue a hotel operators business survey? We issued this survey back in the fall. We received roughly 70 responses, and there were roughly about 18 questions, and clearly I'm not going to go through them. I'm just going to highlight 3 particular questions for sake of brevity. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at the report. So the first question that we asked is, what is your average weekly occupancy rate? We've been talking about this, and this is really important because you see that the majority of respondents indicated that their occupancy rates were anywhere between 10 to 40%. Remember, I mentioned earlier that on a good year, we're looking at 78 to 82%. So at 10 to 40%, I look at that as just keeping the lights on, and that's it. They've let go of staff, and then others experience occupancy rates of 40 to 50%. Now, this was a snapshot in time last fall. Things are starting to change. People are starting to gain confidence and are starting to travel. And we would expect to see even more travel happening during, we certainly saw that during Mother's Day weekend, but we'll see that during Memorial Day weekend as well. Next slide, please. This next question has to do with what percent of pre-COVID guests travels for business. We've established that we are very much a business travel destination, and you could see that by that very large percentage there. I mentioned before, as our economic driver being technology, if it does well, we will do well in our hotel and travel industry sectors. Next slide, please. This was a really important question for us. We wanted to find out from our hotel representatives, at what occupancy rate would they be able to rehire staff? And the majority, actually tied, was 50 to 60% occupancy rate with 70 and 80%. And that's a really interesting response. And it got me thinking, and I don't know this to be fact, but I am surmising that those hotels that are indicating that occupancy rate of 50 to 60%, they would be able to rehire staff. It's likely telling me that they're probably a little older hotel, likely not having to take on additional debt like newer hotels that may need more 70 and 80% occupancy rates. Those hotels that are at the 50 and 60% likely have a greater reserve to tap into. So that was an interesting one. But this is important because not only does the hotel travel industry and hospitality generate very important revenue resources for us, but they also provide strong quality jobs for people of various skill sets. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the actual report, and let me give you a little bit of background. This is a regional effort. It's not being done. The only other area in the state that has something similar to what we are developing is Anaheim and Orange County. Think of Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm. They're more of a leisurely travel destination, but they partner with various cities and their offices of economic development, chambers of commerce. We're trying to emulate that. And so we have representatives from down to Gilroy, Santa Cruz, San Mateo, and San Francisco, and of course, Santa Clara, that are part of this effort. Our report started off as a meeting with Santa Clara County under what they call their economic recovery support function team, of which I am a part of, and we meet on a monthly basis. And it's really meant to help the business community, not just hotels and travel industry, but all business communities, as well as nonprofits, and just to make sure that they are able to open safely and productively. So what we intended to do was to develop a guide for local government and industry leaders. And what makes us unique is exactly that. We're bringing industry folks, with public officials, as well as representatives from the Convention and Visitors Bureaus. So it's a 55+ page document. There's over 60 recommendations. I'm only going to touch on a couple of these. There are really 4 different chapters here, starting with Clean 365. 365 is representative 365 days a year. It's really focused on public health and safety. Sensitivity to changing and adapting industries. We are in a world that has changed dramatically, such as people working from home or people having hybrid work schedules. How is that going to affect not just people working in office and hotels, but there's other changes that are happening. So it's really more about resiliency. And then, of course, the core to this effort is really regional partnerships. And you'll see in a slide coming up soon the regional partners that we are collaborating with. And then we end with marketing and promotions. After that, I'll hand it over to Nicole and she'll talk to you more about our task force. Next slide, please. So the next 4 slides are just going to dive a little bit deeper into each chapter. So again, Clean 365 is really about reopening safely and productively. It's letting public officials know what those health and safety measures are. You're probably thinking, well, they should know. Well, some do and some don't. It's also about ensuring that the hotel and travel industries are staying vigilant and they are in fact adhering to these public health and safety measures. And it's been incredibly challenging for the business community. As you know, initially during the lockdown, there was this idea of essential businesses, quote unquote, and those essential businesses were able to stay open. If you were non-essential, you'd have to close. Then we evolved into this California blueprint for a safer economy. Then we went to a regional stay-at-home order, and we're back now to this blueprint. Those start and stop cycles for the business community are incredibly difficult. Not only is it expensive, but it is also challenging to rehire people when you've had to let them go, a month or so before that. So in terms of guidelines and recommendations, you're going to hear about the task force that we call RSV, which stands for Reconnecting Silicon Valley. Nicole's going to give you an update on that. You've seen the multiplier effect that the hotel and travel industries play. They create good quality jobs. We recognize that those sectors to be priority, and we want to make sure that our public officials consider them priority industries as well. And we recognize that some hotels are having to make improvements in their hotels, such as HVAC systems or air filtration systems. The extended stay product has done much better than the luxury product. So it could be that some hotel managers decide to make improvements to some of those rooms to make them more extended stay friendly. Next slide, please. This next chapter has to do with increasing sensitivity and changing and adapting industries. And again, we are recognizing that the world has changed. McKinsey has conducted a study. You see that chart on the left-hand side. While we know that people are working from home, they've indicated that business travel will return. It'll be in phases based on sectors. And certainly we've seen manufacturing and biomedical and pharmaceutical companies stay open. We've seen tech and real estate, and finance and energy companies that are open now. And eventually we'll get to a later recovery where all businesses end up opening as we move into the yellow tier, or we get to June 15 when the governor has indicated the economy would open up completely. So working from home is obviously important. It's changing various industries. But as we talked to various hotel and travel industries, they reminded us that we're social beings and meaningful human connections are incredibly important. And that H to H means human to human. And I too am a believer that we're going to come back, and it might take some time, but we will be back. Guidelines and recommendations for this chapter include airlines allowing or offering pre-flight testing at SJC. That started many months ago. I just mentioned earlier that there are hotels in extended stay products that have done very well. We would assume that some other hotel types might want to offer, a diverse, options in their rooms. Perhaps they have meeting rooms that they end up wanting to convert to rooms instead of meeting space. And we've noticed that while some hotels have been open specifically for people that are quarantining and or for essential workers, their restaurants and hotels have been totally dormant. So there's been some really creative general managers that have opened their kitchens as ghost kitchens. And so they have leased their kitchens to chefs for pickup or even catering. So it allows for the hotel to make a little bit of revenue in a short-term lease situation there. Next slide, please. This next slide has to do with regional partnerships. You see our partners there. It's not an exhaustive list. You'll see another slide that really talks more about our regional partnerships. I wanted to show you this San Jose Airport chart, and we're partnering with Scott Wintner. He is their Deputy Director for Marketing and Communications. And I think it's really telling that after major events like the dot-com boom and bust, post 9/11, SARS, and the most recent Great Recession, the SJC airport has always bounced back. And I think we're going to see that. I can't tell you when, but I do believe that it's going to happen. On a pre-pandemic day, on any given day, the San Jose airport would see anywhere between 16,000 people going through the airport up to 26,000. During that pandemic, there's been an average of about 4,000 people traversing the airport every day. In terms of guidelines, I've already talked about the start and stops business cycles that are really challenging to get through. We talked earlier about business travel and the tech sector. They tend to have business travel managers. We are connecting these business travel managers with convention and visitor bureaus and other travel partners. Next slide, please. So this is in regards to our marketing and promotions chapter. We want to ensure that people feel safe. And so the way our hotel and travel industry leaders are communicating is this tagline that they created: "We are ready when you're ready." What they're basically trying to say is that we understand you don't have the confidence at this point. We need to work on trust, but we want to be transparent. We're going to be here. We're going to have the highest grade of safety and safety protocols. And so we are starting to see that travel is starting to come back ever so slightly. San Jose Airport, if you go onto their website, you'll see this really cool virtual tour. It's a video that depicts a traveler from when they arrive to the parking garage to when they leave. And it just shows a very calm, safe experience. And so they really are trying to follow that "we are ready when you're ready" tagline. There are various hotels in Palm Springs in particular that have developed what they call buy now, stay later. And the way this works is if you go onto this website and you spend $100, 60 days later, that $100 will be worth $150 that you can then use as this resort. I think that's really creative. We have been talking about doing a marketing campaign that we call Love What's Silicon Valley. When the time is right, perhaps we'll have some Instagrammable moments and pictures for people to take around the region to let people know that it's safe to travel here. And then we're working closely with the state's travel arm, which is known as Visit California, Cal Travel, and other programs to ensure that there's marketing dollars. Next slide, please. So before I hand it off to Nicole, we developed a timeline. And remember that our report was issued in early January. So we're still in the short term, but just about to finish that short term area or section in June. The vaccines are being distributed. Business restrictions are starting to get lower in terms of there's more availability of business activities like dining. There's some meetings that are available at this point. We are starting to see that new coronavirus cases are starting to drop, although we're still very much in this fight, and we need to be vigilant in that regard. And leisure travel begins to return before business travel, and that we are seeing. And then toward the back end of this year, from July through December, we're going to see more Americans receive their vaccines, although I have noticed that there's been a kind of a lull in the last week or two. Hopefully there will be more people deciding to get the vaccines. We see that schools and offices are beginning to reopen. And thankfully for hotel and travel industry leaders, bookings for meetings and large conferences are starting to begin. And then when we look at the long term, we really have decided this is going to be a couple years. And so we're looking at January 2022 through December of 2023. We start introducing entertainment, conferences, sporting events. And while I recognize that some sporting events are open with limited capacity, we would think in the next year or two, there's going to be more of that, as well as business travel begins to reappear in larger volumes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole. I believe the next slide is for her. Next slide, please. Yes, Nicole, take it away.
Thank you, Andrade. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Nicole Inamine. I am on the Economic Development team. And so as you heard Director Andrade mention, part of our hotel paper, one of our recommendations was to strengthen the regional partnerships. And as you see on this slide, we have begun engaging a broad base of stakeholders, including local representatives from local governments, from the county to various cities in the Bay Area. We also have representatives from our hotel industries, some right in our backyard, Holiday Inn and Suites, the Element, Sonesta Hotels. We also have representatives from MGM, the Courtyard, and the Hyatt. We also have business travel advocates. Silicon Valley chapter of Global Business Travel Association has been very involved. As Director Andrade mentioned, we have Scott Wintner from the Norman Mineta San Jose Airport, and several convention and travel bureaus and destination marketing organizations like Team San Jose, Visit Gilroy, Visit Morgan Hill, even folks from San Francisco and Visit Anaheim have been engaged in our effort as well. And so the city of Milpitas is leading this collaborative partnership in partnership with local hotel representatives, the Global Business Travel Association, and the airport. And over the past month, we have reached out to all of these entities and hope to keep growing our base. And I just wanted to share some key takeaways, especially from the conversations we've had with the local convention and travel bureaus, or CVBs and DMOs. The first one is they all really expressed the need to have a public-private partnership. When we told them that we were convening these stakeholders together, they were all really excited, and they were all really looking for that opportunity to connect with their local policymakers and to inform that policymaking decision, because they bring so much experience from the front lines to the table. And so they were really expressing a desire for that. The second takeaway is that the recovery of the hospitality industry is more than just the return of business travel. Even in a place like Silicon Valley, where we are a hub of many companies and our hub of business travel, it's really the return of a active tourism scene, a busy airport, sports and entertainment, thriving convention centers, in addition to business travel that make for a full recovery. And the last takeaway I wanted to share was just how critical, or rather that the pandemic really highlighted just how critical CVBs and DMOs are to contributing to the regional economy, and they often go overlooked. And so they were all more than willing, very much willing to work with us in this collaborative regional partnership. Next slide, please. And so from this need to work at a regional level, to work with a broad base of stakeholders, we created what we're calling Reconnecting Silicon Valley. It's a task force that convenes every month or so, and it consists of all of the stakeholders that I just mentioned in the last slide. So in an effort to be effective and strategic, we created 4 subcommittees. And starting with strategy, they set our short and long-term goals and identify issues and priorities that affect these stakeholders in the hotel and travel industries. And then that then informs the advocacy group, which takes the goals and the priorities, and we bring it and collaborate with local governments to ensure that the issues are addressed in the policy decision-making process. And then that informs the communications and marketing to create awareness of the importance of business travel and the recovery of all of these other sectors, and create awareness of what we as a task force are trying to accomplish to influence the business and leisure traveler. And then that then gives back to recruitment. By building a broader base of stakeholders, we have more insights, more knowledge at the table to strengthen how we approach different entities. And that is currently kind of in its infancy. This task force is currently in its infancy stages. We just had our first large kickoff meeting last week, and we hope to continue engaging with our stakeholders. And I just wanted to share one anecdote of why I think a collaboration like this is so important. And the anecdote came from Makiko Barrett, who is the vice president of the Silicon Valley chapter of the Global Business Travel Association. She shared her experience of trying to arrange for her first business meeting for a group of 15 to 20 business travelers, so arranging this first one since the pandemic started. And she was talking about how hard enough it was to find a space that would accommodate such a large group of travelers, and not only a space, but what kinds of restaurants nearby could they dine at. It wasn't easy to find a restaurant that would accommodate such a large group because of the current health restrictions. And so she ended up pivoting to doing catering. And so she just presented her story that highlighted the importance of each one of these stakeholders working together, and that smooth recovery for the hotel, hospitality, and travel industries is really not just the return of one thing, but rather all of these moving parts working together. And Reconnecting Silicon Valley will hopefully be this platform where these insights and better informing policy decision-making can come from. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Alex Andrade.
Thanks, Nicole. So one more slide. And this is really just talking about the collaboration with our planning team and with you as planning commission. So I know that I've mentioned this to Director Thomas many times. I am a strong believer that good planning is good economic development, and good economic development is good planning. So we work closely together. I appreciate the time that you've provided us. Every decision that you make while you're at the dais or the virtual dais has a fiscal impact to it. But we know that you are working to create a business-friendly environment. We saw that recently, as well as the city council, when you reduced the parking requirements from 1 parking spot to 1 hotel room to 0.70. And that's really important because at this point, it'll help incentivize development, but also we don't have developers build parking spaces that are really expensive and aren't being utilized. We've partnered with the planning department on short-term rentals. The Office of Economic Development kicked off the short-term rental work in partnership with the planning department as it relates to Muni Code amendments, as well as a VCA, which is a voluntary collection agreement with Airbnb to collect TOT. At this point, that work is being led by our planning department for compliance. The planning department has been incredibly business friendly as it developed a temporary outdoor dining program, which has been fantastic, and we're partnering on specific plans. And so we look forward to coming before you again for some future hotel development projects or anything else related to the economy or economic development and community development. So we welcome an invitation, and thank you very much for your time. We're happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Andrade and Ms. Inamini. I'm sorry. And Chair has a couple quick questions, if you don't mind.
Please.
So based on the current environment, how many hotels are actually on the drawing board that are intending on still carrying through with their proposed project?
I am going to be looking to our planning team for that. I know that next to the Element, there was a project that I believe was supposed to be an AC. I believe it's on hold because of, or rather, it was on hold at the beginning of the pandemic because they reached out to us asking for assistance in TOT deferral or waiving. But most recently, I believe our planning team has been in conversations with them. And so I'm going to hand it off to either Jessica or Ned. And I believe there are other projects that were in the works and the pandemic hit. And so perhaps in a pause. So Ned, Jessica?
Thank you, Alex. I'm happy to just inform the Planning Commission that you will be receiving an agenda item coming up in the next few months for a proposed hotel that's going to be located off of McCarthy Boulevard. We're not quite there yet. The applicants have been working diligently with our planners to get their proposal completed. We still have some CEQA analysis that needs to be done, but they're tightening it up and it's very, very close to being complete. So we'll have more information for you a little bit later on this summer when the planner brings that to you as an item for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. I assume that's in a similar classification as most of our lodging sector is.
It is, you know, and I don't want to get in front of who the actual applicant is, but we believe that it's Aloft who will be basically the tenant of the hotel. So they've made some changes. We had a different hotelier in the initial stages of the project that changed over to Aloft. It's a great product. We'd be excited and thrilled to have them as a hotelier in our city.
Great, and Mr. Andrade, that we have quite a number of that sort of the extended product as well as the sort of that 3-4 star range products. Does it impact? Do we have the sustainability to support all of the existing as well as planned projects going forward? And it feels like we're kind of in that period of transition, and there. How do I say this correctly? As we swing back into the normalcy, is how long can these operators and the ownerships survive through the cycle and continue forward? And there's that critical point economically for them to. Some of them may be able to weather it, and some of them may not. But when you add on new rooms, does that create the issue that we don't anticipate?
Yeah, Chair Tao, that's a really good question. And for years, there has been a conversation about saturation. And I think that might be where you're headed. You mentioned sustainability, but back in 2015, 2016, when Silicon Valley was the host to the Super Bowl at Levi Stadium, economic developers around the region noticed that we didn't have enough keys. We didn't have enough rooms in the Silicon Valley region. So just about everybody went to work to bring in more hotel development. It depends on who you ask in terms of whether we've reached a level of saturation or not. Based on what Planning Manager Gardner just mentioned, that is a good indicator because it's telling us that people are still willing to invest. They're investing locally. They're going to create jobs. They'll create TOT revenues for us. So that's a good indicator. We're also planning within the metro area for another hotel, perhaps. And then, of course, within the TASP area, hopefully we'll see an extended stay hotel there in the future. So I think to your point, there are some hotels that have been able to weather this pandemic a lot better. Call it the Embassy Suites of the world. The Sonesta has actually doubled. They have taken over the Crown Plaza Hotel, which is right off of Highway 237. So those more established, probably hoteliers that have been around longer have been doing better.
Thank you. Are there any other, I guess is to the planning staff as well as to Director Andrade, any other hotels are being slated for repurposing in terms of the use?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of anything that's happening right now. Again, I think we're just going to be open and flexible to deal with our existing businesses. And as things change, we're going to be working closely with our economic development staff. As things come up, they may hear it before we do. But if we do hear anything, and if it is a land use issue, we will be bringing it back to the Planning Commission's attention. But really, we've got to be able to be flexible and to pivot to support our businesses. And it's a critical time, and everybody is on a very thin thread right now of being able to survive.
We understand. We appreciate it. And I saw Commissioner Sardella has a question.
Yes, I've got a question. Is the city, and I think we might be able to do that, but you guys are going to have to tell me. Can we promote Legoland since most of the travel is, what'd you say, Monday through Thursday? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We should be able to fill those rooms with people going to Legoland. And I just wanted to know if the city was doing anything to promote Legoland. And I'm sure the chamber will be promoting Legoland also. In fact, as soon as I'm done, I'm going to make a couple of phone calls. Thank you.
So I'll start by thanking actually city staff. When we first heard about Legoland's interest in Milpitas, we talked to the then city manager, and that following day, directors from various departments got together and made it a strategic point and plan to ensure that we provided the best possible customer service and expediting when we could. And that permit got to the decision-making body quicker than I've ever seen. So that's just to say that, yes, we care. We competed against Mexico City and Shanghai. We won. So we should be very proud about that. We will absolutely continue to promote Legoland. I mentioned earlier that their representatives communicated to us early on that they expect 300,000 visitors per year. It will be a regional draw. So yes, our hotels hopefully will be able to do well on weekends. And perhaps when we get to a point where sporting events and concerts and conventions and meetings open up, we will tie into that as well.
Thank you. And I'll go to Director Thomas, then to Commissioner Alcorn thereafter.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, sort of on a tangent, a little bit of a related note. On the last slide, Director Andrade mentioned short-term rentals. I just wanted to let the commission know we will be initiating the city's short-term rental program here very shortly. We have some press releases ready to go, and there's some web-based tools that are ready to go. We're just waiting for a few last details to get hammered out, but keep watching for that. The short-term rental policy or ordinance was adopted last year, but we sort of put everything on hold during the pandemic because it didn't really make a lot of sense to roll out a program when people were not traveling. So watch for that. It's related to the hotel, very closely related to the hotel industry, but it's another opportunity for the city to collect TOT from people who are visiting and using our facilities in the city.
Thank you, Director Thomas. And Commissioner Alcorn.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Andrade, what is the official name of Legoland? Yeah, I know.
I recall you and I were standing there next to each other at the event, and at one point they had a name that the city was not very pleased with. I believe they've landed with Bay Area, Legoland Bay Area.
Okay.
I'll confirm that with you, but I know that a previous city that was mentioned is not a part of the official name.
Okay, cool. My concern was that when we promote it, people, if there was the wrong city in the name, people would book their hotels in the other city because they're like, oh, that city, this city. But if it's Bay Area, they probably look at the address and find out it's in Milpitas and then book a hotel in Milpitas if they're coming and they're traveling. So that was a big concern of mine, which I never actually heard what they landed on with that. So
I'm pretty sure it's Bay Area, but Bay Area, Legoland Discovery Center, Bay Area. I'll confirm that. You will rest assured that we're going to have a big capital M all over it for Milpitas.
Love it. If you could send me an email, actually, mostly for my curiosity.
Sure.
Whenever you have a chance. I'd love that. So another question, you brought up that there's a project possibly on, or a project that was on hold, and they asked for some TOT relief. Do we have any programs for temporary TOT relief for hotels that are struggling?
We do not. And it's a real important issue. As a matter of fact, I received a phone call today from a local hotel. The voice message indicated that they were interested in having that conversation. Early on in the pandemic, call it April 2020, I received 3 different formal requests for either TOT deferrals or TOT waiving. And at that point, because the city relies heavily on TOT, city staff made the determination that they would not support that. They did explain to those hotel representatives that they could reach out to the city council and have that conversation, but it never continued beyond that. Last night at the city council meeting, there were various conversations about American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and there was a council member that specifically communicated that they are interested in helping out hotels with some financial assistance. So there wasn't a formal vote, but we are obviously going to be tracking that, and we'll see if there's a way for us to help our hotel industry from a financial perspective.
I understand that a deferral or waiver of TOT tax would be like detrimental to the city budget. Has there been any studies done on if you were to do it by case kind of special exception basis, if in the long run you would actually gain more because you wouldn't be losing out on potential business from not being able to work with people? That was a very long-winded question, but has there been any kind of study done on that end?
So one of the representatives made that same statement you did. Basically, the person was saying, look, if you help us, we will help you in the long run. That person did state an example in Southern California, and I want to say that they provided a report that kind of alluded to some of that, but it didn't change staff's perspective. And Nicole and I belong to the Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance. It's a group of economic development professionals from a regional perspective, 25 cities or so, and we are conversating about all sorts of things related to the economy regionally. And I have yet to hear of any local city proceed with a TOT deferral on a case-by-case basis, or just in any way, shape, or form, because a lot of these cities are just not doing very well from a fiscal health perspective.
Well, you know, Milpitas, we are leaders, not followers. Okay, I mean, I'm just asking questions out of curiosity. I 100% trust your judgment on this. You are the expert, and you're very good at what you do. So I have full confidence in you in this issue. But I would say, from my granted limited knowledge of this industry compared to someone as yourself who's been in it for a while, it just a kind of, from a business sense, it might be worth it to look into that, because like you said, you know, business owners are very, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and in this case, it might benefit us, especially if the alternative is no income forever. So we might be in a situation where it could be no TOT income from that particular company forever, or no TOT income for 2 years. And then after 2 years, then we get the income. So we might fall into that situation. So I would say just kind of keep your eyes peeled and look out for that, because we may run into that. And like I said, you're the expert here, so I trust your judgment. And if we come up to that situation, I have full confidence that you'll be able to see it and make something great happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Alcorn. It's a really good and strong point. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Alcorn. Commissioners, any commissioners have questions or comments? Okay. Question for Director Andrade and Ms. Inamini. From the perspective and approach, it feels like we're kind of running with other cities as a pack and kind of taking on the regional perspective. From a selfish standpoint, are there anything that, and a takeoff on Commissioner Alcorn's discussions, are there anything that's individual to this city here that we may be able to offer, for because we have certain capacity to do so? For example, expedited processings, or I'm just kind of throwing out an idea, but don't know what. Is there anything out there that which we can make that our own to the enticement?
Yeah, Chair Tao, we are definitely being regional leaders in this, but with a very hyper focus on making sure that our 20 or so hotels are, moving from just getting along to thriving. So yeah, we're with them. One of the major issues that I discovered recently in talking to two hotel general managers, really suffering from allergies today. But in talking to two hotel general managers last week, I learned that the top three things that they are contending with today in order are workforce. Number one, they're finding it challenging to bring people back to work. Number two is, paying mortgage, I think it was. And then number three was paying for utilities. So we're actually partnering with Nova Works. It is our workforce investment board, where we had just kicked off what we're calling COVID-19 Workforce Recovery Program. It's a two-phased approach with Nova Works. Phase one is looking at our employers, looking at what types of skill sets they are lacking but need. And then we're looking at residents and looking at specific skill sets that they have or don't have. And phase two will result in looking at those assessments and developing workforce development programs. And as a matter of fact, I will thank Commissioner Belong. He has just started as part of our working group, which just kicked off, I think, this week. So we're going to be helping out our hotel partners in that regard. We have had conversations with Mayor Tran about developing a mayor's business roundtable, starting with our hotel industry to look for various ways that we can help the industry. We are trying to think creatively, and I will be speaking with our public safety, building and safety folks and our fire representatives as well to see if there's anything that we can do as these hoteliers come to the city with potential tenant improvements, whether it be redoing their rooms, whether to make them more for extended stay type overnight stays, or whether they're needing to do HVAC improvements or other tenant improvements. We're going to have those discussions to see what we can do to ensure that we help these industries.
Thank you very much for your response. And commissioners, any other questions or discussion items for staff? Okay, seeing none. And this is an item that the recommendation is to receive the staff update on the research recommendations for hotel and travel industries. City Attorney, I don't think there's any particular action that which we need to take as a planning commission, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, no action.
Thank you very much. And at this point in time, I'd like to thank Director Andrade and Ms. Inamini for your time this evening for for the Planning Commission presentation. We highly appreciate your time and wonderful
Thank you.
work that you're doing on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Very quick thing.
I'm sorry.
I said, can I say one really quick thing?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
I just wanted to express how much I appreciated Mr. Andrade and his team for doing all of this. It was a very extremely comprehensive report, and he managed to keep it interesting the whole time, which is impressive. Granted, this type of thing does interest me, so that helped. But I just want to thank you and let you know that I really appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I got to say, shout out to Nicole and Daniel and her team and various other folks, as well as some of our city team representatives. So thank you. Always a team effort.
Your whole team is great.
Okay. Thank you here this evening, and thank you to all the team members who have been part of this process. We highly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. And so without further ado, and I think, hold on one second here. So a little legal news for the end of the meeting. So any person aggrieved by any final decision of any board, commission, or department head to the city of Milpitas may appeal the decision to the city council by filing written notice of the appeal with the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date of said decision, and paying the required fee. This time limit shall be strictly enforced. And so the next agenda item here is adjournment. And so can I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, well, I believe Commissioner Belong spoke first, and the Vice Chair, I believe, would you have a second on that? Vice Chair, would you be the second on that? Yes. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Belong and second by Vice Chair Chuan, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much, and the meeting's adjourned. And well, thank you very much for the meeting this evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next Planning Commission meeting at the end of the month. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.